was supposed to be the perfect weekend escape, a dream vacation. Just me, my girlfriend Alicia, and a beach house in the Hamptons, miles away from the noise of the city. We'd been together for 7 years, and this was our first time splurging on a luxury Airbnb, right on the sand, totally secluded, private pool, panoramic ocean views, the kind of place you see in movies. The back door didn't open to a patio, it opened straight onto the dunes. No fences, no neighbors in sight, just miles of beach stretching into the horizon, and the soft crash of the waves as our soundtrack. For the first day and a half, everything was perfect. We lay in the sun during the day, drinks in hand, toes buried in warm sand. In the evenings, we hit a couple of the local bars, grabbed drinks, and came home to watch movies with the windows open, letting in the ocean breeze. But it was on the second day when things shifted. We had just come back from a swim in the pool and were drying off on the beach behind the house. The sun was still high, but starting to dip, casting long shadows across the dunes. I stood up to shake the sand from my towel, and that's when I saw it. It was at the window upstairs, a single figure, motionless, watching us. I froze. It wasn't just a trick of the light, at least I didn't think it was. The glare on the glass from the setting sun made it hard to be sure. I squinted. Alicia noticed I wasn't moving and looked up at me. "What's wrong?" she asked. I pointed toward the house. "Do you see that in the upstairs window?" She looked where I was pointing. "See what?" But by the time she looked, the figure was gone. I ran straight up the stairs of the house, into the room with the window that overlooked the beach. The bedroom was empty, closet empty, under the bed, nothing. I checked every room on the second floor, no sign of anyone. The only sounds were the soft humming of the window air conditioners and the front door opening as Alicia came inside, carrying our towels and bags. I chalked it up to heat exhaustion, or maybe just squinting into the sun too long. Still, the feeling lingered, that moment of eye contact, that jolt in my chest. I tried to shake it off. That night, we hit the bars again. It was our last night, so we stayed out a little later than usual. Got back around 11 p.m., laughing, tipsy, and tired, until we opened the front door, and the lights wouldn't turn on. At first, we thought it was just a blown bulb, but then we noticed all the digital clocks were blank. Cable box, oven, microwave, no blinking lights, total power outage. I fumbled around in the kitchen for a flashlight, but couldn't find one. We used our phones to light the way, eventually giving up and heading upstairs to bed. Alicia passed out within minutes. The alcohol helped, but I couldn't sleep. Something about the house just felt wrong. Maybe it was the silence, or the fact that we were so isolated. I couldn't stop thinking about the figure in the window. What if it hadn't been a trick of the light? I was lying there, eyes open in the dark, when I saw movement at the bedroom door. Someone walked past it. My breath caught in my throat. I sat up, heart pounding, and for a second I questioned everything. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe it was just the light from my phone. Then the footsteps came back. I bolted from the bed and lunged toward the door, locking it just as the knob started to rattle. Then came the knock, a man's voice. Calm, measured. "It's the landlord," he said. "I came to fix the power." No way. No way the landlord was here at midnight. No call, no warning. And why would he be upstairs? I didn't respond. The knocks got louder, more urgent, then turned into pounding. The door shook in its frame as the man on the other side began twisting the doorknob violently, shaking it, trying to force it open. Alicia woke up screaming. I yelled at her, called the cops, and suddenly everything stopped. The pounding, the voice, the footsteps, nothing, just silence. We waited in that room for what felt like hours, huddled by the window, trying to see anything in the pitch black of the backyard. Eventually, flashing red and blue lights lit up the inside of the room, and we heard voices downstairs. Police. They had come in through the front door, which, according to them, had been wide open when they arrived. They searched the house, found no one, took our statements, filed a report. One of the officers found the circuit box hidden behind a cabinet in the garage and restored the power, but they didn't find the man. There was no forced entry, no signs of tampering, but the officer said, "We've had a few reports of squatters using summer rentals in the off-season. Might be someone trying to scare you out." We left first thing the next morning. Alicia didn't say a word the entire ride home. I called the landlord when we got back to the city, told him what happened, asked if he had any security footage. He sounded confused at first, then dead serious. "I haven't been out to the Hamptons in over a month." He said, "No one should have been at that house." To this day, I don't know who was in that room. I don't know if it was just one person or more, but the worst part, the window I thought I saw him in, that room was locked when we first arrived, and we never found the key. It was the 4th of July. Hot, loud, and boring. I had just finished my sophomore year of high school, and while everyone else was out partying, I was grounded. My parents were throwing some dull neighborhood get-together in our cul-de-sac and practically dragged me outside to socialize. The only saving grace was that my friend Eli lived just a few houses down. When I called him, he said he'd already walked over and was equally miserable. Neither of us cared for small talk with chatty adults holding warm beers in plastic cups. After 15 minutes of forced smiles and nods, Eli leaned in and said, "Doesn't Savannah live down the street? We should door ditch her." I laughed. Of course he brought up Savannah. She was that girl, every guy's crush, perfect smile, popular, always a step out of reach. We were neighbors, but I'd never even spoken to her. And yeah, her dad was also my dentist, so things were awkward enough already. But it was better than standing around pretending to enjoy potato salad with middle-aged strangers. I shrugged and said, "Let's do it." So, we slipped away from the barbecue, heading down the street as the sun started to dip behind the trees. Eli claimed he knew exactly where Savannah lived, pointing at a large house with a wraparound porch and 2-car garage. It was fancier than most of the houses in our neighborhood, cleaner, newer, and completely dark. No lights, no cars, no sign of life. We stopped at the curb, studying the place. "I think they're out of town," I said. "Let's just come back next week." But Eli wasn't listening. He was already walking up the driveway, eyes locked on the front door. I followed hesitantly, whispering for him to stop. Then his hand touched the doorknob, and it turned. Click. The door was unlocked. He turned back to me with a grin. "Dude, they left the door open." Before I could say a word, he was inside. I followed because, I was curious too. And it felt unreal, like we were walking into a movie. The house was cold, not AC cold. Dead cold. No lights, no sound. The kind of silence that presses into your ears and makes you question whether anyone had been here in days. We whispered to each other as we crept down the main hallway. Past the living room, the kitchen, every room was pristine, empty but clean. Eli turned down a hallway and disappeared into a room I assumed was Savannah's. I wandered in the other direction, taking slow steps torn between fear and adrenaline. I peeked into a few bedrooms, noted the neat furniture, the family photos on the walls. Then I heard it. Eli screaming. I sprinted back down the hall, nearly slipping on the tile. I found him coming out of Savannah's room, pale and frantic. "Why are you screaming?" I asked. He grabbed my arm. "There's someone in her closet." I blinked. "What do you mean? Like a family member?" He shook his head, breathing hard. It was a man, hiding. And this is clearly a girl's room. Everything's pink and white. Why would a grown man be hiding in a teenage girl's closet? I didn't have an answer, but the look on his face convinced me he wasn't joking. That's when we heard footsteps. Heavy, deliberate. Someone was coming down the hall. We darted into the nearest bathroom and quietly closed the door, locking it. We stood there in the dark, not even daring to breathe. Then the knocking started. It was soft at first, almost polite. Then harder, louder. fists pounding against the door like they were trying to break it down, and then screaming. A man's voice, unhinged, furious, screaming nonsense and slamming the door like he was trying to rip it off the hinges. I turned around and looked at the small bathroom window above the toilet. "We need to get out," I whispered. It was bolted shut. My hands searched blindly around the room, heart thudding in my ears. Then I saw it, a rusty wrench on the floor near the sink. By the time we got back to the street, fireworks were exploding in the distance, colorful bursts lighting up the sky, while our hearts pounded from real terror. We didn't say much that night. We limped home, breathless and bleeding, too afraid to tell anyone what happened. A few days passed. Savannah's family came home. Their car was back in the driveway, porch lights on again, and I couldn't take it anymore. The guilt was eating me alive. I told my parents everything, then I told the police. I admitted to breaking in. I expected to get arrested, maybe even thrown in juvie. Instead, they called Savannah's dad, my dentist, and scheduled a meeting with all of us. I sat there in his office, ready to face the consequences. I looked him in the eye and said, "I know what I did was wrong, but there was a man in your daughter's closet. He tried to hurt us." At first he was silent, then he leaned forward slowly and said something that made my stomach drop. We never invited anyone to stay in the house while we were gone. There had been no pet sitter, no guest, no contractor, no friend watching the place. No one was supposed to be there, which means whoever was in that closet had been there on their own, waiting. When I was 17, I got my first summer job as a counselor at a small sleepaway camp upstate. It was exactly the kind of escape I needed. Away from home, away from my parents, and completely surrounded by woods, cabins, and kids who thought we were heroes. The camp was small, 5 main buildings, boys' dorms, girls' dorms, counselor dorms, a central building we called the Shack that held the cafeteria, nurse's station, and main office, and finally, a little bathroom building out near the tree line. Every counselor had a key to the Shack, and curfew was strict. No kids out past 9 p.m., no one in the woods after dark. The first few weeks were routine. I made friends fast, especially with this guy Johnny. He was 3 years older and already a returning counselor, but we clicked immediately. He had that kind of charisma where people just trusted him. Funny, chill, the kind of guy who always had a story ready. It was a Friday night when everything changed. The first night of the weekend, which meant a break from responsibilities and a chance to just hang out. Johnny and I met up with 2 of the female counselors we'd been talking to. We all slipped away into the woods behind the boys' dorm, figuring no one would notice for a bit. Someone had brought weed. I wasn't a regular smoker, but I joined in anyway, figured it'd help me relax. We passed the joint around, sitting in a little clearing under the trees, laughing quietly and trying not to be too loud. One of the girls was mid-sentence when it happened. Crunch. Everyone froze. Heads turned at once. It wasn't a squirrel or some rustling animal. It was distinct. A footstep, a single one. Then came the flash, a bright, sudden burst of white light from somewhere behind the trees. It was so fast, so unexpected. None of us knew what to make of it. Like a camera flash in total darkness. Nobody spoke. We just stood up and booked it back to camp. We didn't talk about it, not right away. We were all panicking. If someone had taken a picture of us out there, especially a supervisor, we'd be fired. 0 tolerance policy. I tried to play it cool, but that night, lying in my bed, it started to eat at me. I get paranoid when I smoke, like painfully paranoid, and now I couldn't stop thinking about that flash. Was someone following us? Was I just being dramatic? I told myself to stop overthinking, but I couldn't. Eventually, I got up. I needed to know if any supervisors were still in the shack. If they saw us, maybe I could come clean, apologize, take the fall. Maybe I'd just get a warning. I grabbed my key and walked across the campgrounds alone. The forest that surrounded the area suddenly felt alive, like the trees were leaning closer than they had earlier in the day. I reached the shack, used my key. The door creaked as I stepped inside and then slammed. It shut behind me, echoing in the empty space. No lights. The cafeteria was dark. The main hallway stretched out ahead, with a faint emergency light glowing at the end. I walked slowly, my footsteps echoing off the tile. The office was empty. No supervisors, no lights, no sound. I was alone until I heard the door slam again. Not the hallway door, the one I had come through. I froze. Someone else had just come in. I stepped back into the shadows, pressed myself against the wall near the intersection of two hallways, heart racing. I peeked around the corner, just enough to see. Ahead, someone else was doing the same thing, peeking around the edge of the doorway, watching me. They didn't move, just stared. That was all I needed. I ran, didn't care about noise, didn't care if I looked insane. I bolted out the back exit, across the lawn, and straight into the counselor dorms. Only 3 people were still up, sitting in the common room. One of them was Johnny. I pulled him aside and told him everything. He didn't laugh, but he didn't seem totally convinced either. "You're still high," he said. "You're just freaking yourself out." I swore I wasn't, but he didn't press the issue. Just told me to lock my door and get some sleep. Said he double-checked the dorm entrance. I tried. I really did. But the beds in those rooms, they were right up against the windows. No blinds. Just a plain pane of glass looking out into the trees. Usually, the moonlight helped me sleep. Not that night. That night was dark until it wasn't, because hours later there was another flash. A white-hot burst of light that filled my room. I sat up instantly, heart in my throat. I turned toward the window, and someone was standing there, motionless, silhouetted by the faint glow from behind. And then they waved. A slow, deliberate wave. That was it for me. I sprinted out of my room, banging on Johnny's door until he opened it, bleary-eyed and annoyed. I screamed at him, told him the guy from earlier was at my window. He grabbed a flashlight and followed me back. But of course, he was gone. "Are you sure?" Johnny asked. "You're totally sober now, right?" "Dead sober." He told me to grab my blanket and sleep on his floor. I think deep down, he believed me, or at least he was scared too. I didn't sleep much, and I didn't smoke again. The next morning, I went to the main office and told the head supervisor everything. She didn't laugh, but she also didn't really know what to do. She gave me permission to call the police if something else happened. But for the rest of the camp season, nothing did. Until the very last day, the kids had gone home. The counselors were packing up. I woke up, stretched, opened my curtain, and saw 4 pictures taped to the outside of my window. One of me in the woods with Johnny and the girls. One of me asleep in bed.